E. F. Benson by Andrea Alvarez. Background information. Edward Frederick Benson, or E. F. Benson for short, was born July 24, 1867, at Wellington College in Berkshire and died February 29, 1940, in University College Hospital in London. He was the fifth child of the headmaster, Edward White Benson, later Chancellor of Lincoln Cathedral, Bishop of Truro, and Archbishop of Canterbury, and his wife, Mary Sidgwick, Minnie. Benson was the younger brother of Arthur Christopher Benson, who wrote the words to the Land of Hope and Glory. Monsignor Robert Hugh Benson, author of several novels and Roman Catholic apologetic works, and Margaret Benson, or Maggie, an amateur egyptologist. Two other siblings died young. Benson's parents had 6 children and no grandchildren. The famous author and poet wrote reminiscences, fiction, and biographies. E. F. Benson was educated at Marlborough School and at King's College, Cambridge. After his graduation, he worked from 1892 to 1895 in Athens for the British School of Archaeology, and later in Egypt for the Society of Promotion of Hellenic Studies. In 1983, he published Dodo, a novel that attracted wide attention, although the novel was only a start to an additional amount of success in his career. Facts. His father was Archbishop of Canterbury. Because of the connections, Benson gained privileged access to high society, like royalty and aristocracy. He remained friends with some members of the royal family until he died in 1940. He was the creator of Map and Louisa. It is believed he may have written over 100 books, including fiction, history, and biography. Today, he is best known for his ghost stories and the Map and Lucia books. He, his mother, and siblings were all gay. One of his sisters fell for her mother's lovers and attacking both them and her mother because of jealousy. He represented England at figure skating. He was a pioneer of winter sports and championed the building of ice rinks. He was also a great fan of cricket, a passion which he shared with his friends H. G. Wells and Arthur Conan Doyle. He was 3 times mayor of Rye. He provided a lookout post and also a stained glass window in the church. Themes and symbols. Some of the common themes were the supernatural realm. Unlike many writers of ghost stories of the period, Benson never sought to provide a rational explanation for the supernatural events and occurrences in the stories. His stories present a rational world in which the irrational occurs. Some of the stories even situate the conflict directly as to clearly delineate the two realms: death and how to suppress it. One of the most famous stories written by Benson is about a man with the premonition of his own death and how such insight can help one avoid or at least postpone the inevitable. Another famous story personifies cancer into the transformative consequences of horrifying legions of caterpillars. Vampires and ghosts are regular visitors, and reflecting his own autobiographical interests, a plot turns on an unwise decision to desecrate a mummy. Death looms everywhere in the short stories of Benson, but so, too, do the various ways in which death might be subverted. Symbols. The mummy's head, for example, the first and only time in history of horror fiction. The terror of a coming face to face with a mummy in tomb is enhanced by the author in the story Monkeys, through the comparison of a body's head to one of the most delicate desserts known to man. It is a strange choice, but curiously and effective, and creating the necessary image in the reader's mind. A nightmare. One of Benson's favorite go metaphors to describe the uncanny sense unreality that pervades his stories, and a word that accurately conveys the sense of dream, is defining the emotional response stimulated by his stories, is nightmare. It is a word that pops up frequently in various guises. It had, as is plain, something of nightmare about it, the room in the tower. It's a nightmare to contemplate such a thing, and oddly enough, unhinged people like spiritualists want to persuade us for our consolation that the nightmare is true. The sense of nightmare began. Some of the most famous literary works. The Room in the Tower, a slow and intentional story that involves an unnamed narrator who is haunted by a recurring dream that ultimately proves to be all too terribly true. In it, the narrator finds himself set at the door of the big brick red house, and then sits to tea with the gloomy family of a schoolmate named Jack Stone. Each time the dream recurs, it ends with the mother, Julia Stone, announcing to him, "Jack will show you to your room. I have given you the room in the tower. The room in the tower is where you don't want to be lodged for the night." What is peculiar and kind of humorous about the room is that everything that happens in the narrator's nightmare ends up to become a reality. She was a woman who committed suicide some time before. Overall, I would consider The Room in the Tower a good thriller that captures your attention. The Bus Conductor is a story about the premonition of one's death, which was adapted into one of the stories told in the classic horror film Dead of Night, and then again in a classic episode of the original The Twilight Zone, made famous by its terrifying line of dialogue, "Room for one more," which is paraphrased by Benson's original. In addition to fictional adaptations, a very popular urban legend which follows the basic outline of this plot can be traced directly back to Benson's story, which is almost certainly his most famous. The Other Bed is a story about a man who checks into a seedy hotel and is brought a bottle of whiskey despite making no request. A night visitor is a man whose throat has been cut. When he awakens the following day, he learns that the previous occupant of the room had been drunk while he slit his own throat during a spell of the DTs.